Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Janavalabha Girivanadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Janavalabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Nandana Brajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Janavalabha Girivanadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivanadhari Janavalabha Girivanadhari Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Nandana Brajagana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajagana Ranjana Nandana Brajagana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Bhagavacharya Satarya Sacha Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sakoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Ki His confounder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham ki, Jamuna Mai ki, Ganga Mai ki, Tulsi Devi ki, Bhakta Devi ki, Shishi Radha Golokananda ki, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we're continuing our reading of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 10, text 51, the trunk, the branches, and sub-branches of the Chaitanya tree. So we're at text 51, talking about Murari Gupta. So continuing, it says, as Murari Gupta treated his patients, by his mercy, both their bodily and spiritual diseases subsided. Purport. Murari Gupta could treat both bodily and spiritual disease because he was a physician by profession and a great devotee of the Lord in terms of spiritual advancement. This is an example of service to humanity. Everyone should know that there are two kinds of diseases in human society. One disease, which is called adhyatmika, or material disease, pertains to the body, but the main disease is spiritual. The living entity is eternal, but somehow or other, when in contact with material energy, he is subjected to the repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. The physicians of modern day should learn from Murari Gupta. Although modern philanthropic physicians open gigantic hospitals, there are no hospitals to cure the material disease of the spirit soul. The Krishna conscious movement has taken up the mission of curing this disease. But people are not very appreciative because they do not know what this disease is. A diseased person needs both proper medicine and a proper diet. And therefore the Krishna conscious movement supplies materially stricken people with medicine of the chanting of the holy name, or the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and the diet of prasadam. There are many hospitals and medical clinics to cure bodily diseases, but there are no such hospitals to cure the material disease of the spirit soul. The centers of the Krishna conscious movement are the only established hospitals that can cure man of birth, death, old age, and disease. Omaganda Timrandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshomritamina Tajmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this, in the beginning, he talked about Murari Gupta not just being a physician, but being a devotee. So that enhanced his qualities as a physician. Similarly, if we can do business with devotees, it's much better than working with materialistic people, even though in most cases, we have to interact with materialistic individuals. But if you have a devotee doctor, it's much better going to a devotee because he understands everything about, he understands a person's consciousness, which is even more important. And even if it's a lawyer, a devotee, you're better off understanding. You're going to get a better practice. There's a lot of devotees, lawyers. So typically you want to go to them first. Obviously, I don't think there's access here, but and sometimes in management, when you get management, you have access to different devotee lawyers that are there to help. And typically, they're your first course of action. And normally they will, okay, because this is a specialized field too, they can direct you to a person that could particularly help. And this happens quite often. But we see Prabhupada's mission here is to establish centers that can help what the disease condition is. Oftentimes, Bhaktisiddhanta, he would be criticized, why aren't you opening hospitals? Why aren't you feeding the poor? Why aren't you doing so many philanthropic things? And his answer is, you can do these things, but you're only going to temporarily help these people. If you make them become devotees, then you're going to permanently solve their problem. And this is what Prabhupada's talking about here, permanently solve the problem that we have. It's our addiction to material life. Even devotees, Prabhupada would have their parents come to him. And there's one nice conversation in England where a mother, her son became a devotee. And, of course, he was typically, like a lot of people, he was into drugs and doing LSD and all these other types of things. But his mother, as a mother, typically just sees the good things in their children. But she came but she also brought a priest with her. She didn't come just to talk to Prabhupada. She thought she had some reinforcements to help her, because her son had joined the Hare Krishna movement. And so some of these arguments, she said, well, we need doctors, we need lawyers, we need these things. But Prabhupada's argument is, no, we got plenty of hospitals, we got plenty of doctors, we got plenty of lawyers. What we don't have is first-class people, Brahmins. And so this way he would, and of course the priest obviously had no ammunition at all against Prabhupada. She tried, but so these types of things would happen in trying to convince there are arguments with Prabhupada. But in addition, he was in a condition, typically in a material, depressed condition of life. There was no help in him. College wasn't even going to help this person. But Prabhupada was able to save his life. And these things were brought out in the conversation and pointed out. And this is the urgency of why Prabhupada felt so important that there was always a sense of urgency to establish these temples and this mission of his. He didn't know how much time he had. And so the priority was there. He understood where the priority should be focused. And then when individuals come like some of the parents, that he was able to explain to them, what the real importance is in human society and how benefited not only her son was, but how much, because of his actions, they were going to be benefited. She would be benefited just because of her son becoming a devotee. So they don't understand their disease condition, Prabhupada said. It's just so entrenched here that we don't understand. It's very difficult to, and he says, to convey this sense of urgency into society. We see now sometimes conditions are created, like maybe this coronavirus, where some people are seeing, okay, there's maybe something else that I should be thinking about under these conditions. Sometimes the conditions are created. Suffering, is one of the reasons why people approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some people approach it, they want wealth. There's 4 types of people who approach Krishna. So suffering is one of those, dear Lord, if you just help me out of this situation, I promise I'll be a better person, or I'll do this, or I'll go to church, or I'll do something. Get me out of this, There's a saying, there's no atheist in the foxholes. So when people are in a distressed situation, typically they one of the reasons they turn to God. Most of them turn towards, because they want something, wealth, help my business, do something to improve my material condition. But that condition is only temporary. So it's kind of interesting. You talk these are hospitals, because they really are, in a sense, they're educational centers in the sense they help us with our material disease. The purpose of these, they can cure that main disease of birth, death, old age, and disease. Okay, so 52. Sriman Sena, the 22nd branch of the Chaitanya tree, was a very faithful servant of Lord Chaitanya. He knew nothing else but the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sriman Sena was one of the inhabitants of Navadvip and was a constant companion of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. 53. Sri Gadadhar Das, the 23rd branch, was understood to be the topmost, for he induced all the Muslim Qazis to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. Purport. About 8 or 10 miles from Calcutta, on the banks of the Ganges, is a village known as Adiyadaha Gram. Sri Gadadhar Das was known as an inhabitant of this village. The Bhakti Ratnakara, 7th wave, informs us that after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gadadhar Das went from Navadvip to Katwa. Thereafter, he came to Indiyada to reside there. He is stated to be the luster of the body of Srimati Radharani. Just as Srila Gadadhar Pandit Goswami is an incarnation of Srimati Radharani herself, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is sometimes explained to be Radhabhav Duti Suvalita, or characterized by the emotions and bodily luster of Srimati Radharani. Gadadhar Das in his duty or luster in the Gora Ganadesh Deepika, he is described to be an expansion of the potency of Srimati Radharani. And this is kind of not an expansion of her potency, because then you have Gadadhars too. You have Gadadhar, and this is Gadadhar Das, so sometimes those two can be. Gadadhar is also considered an expansion of Radharani. Some of these things get pretty technical, because then Lord Chaitanya took some of the Bhav, so they weren't complete expansions. They were an Arman, Lord Chaitanya. So Gadadhar didn't have that Arman. So he counts among the associates of both Srila Gaurahari and Nityananda Prabhu. As a devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was one of the associates of Lord Krishna in conjugal love. And as a devotee of Lord Nityananda, he is considered to have been one of the friends of Krishna in pure devotional service, even though he was an associate of Lord Nityananda Prabhu. He was not among the cowherd boys, but was situated in the transcendental mellow of conjugal love. He established a temple of Gaurasundar in Katwa. In 1434 Sakatab, or 1512 AD, when Lord Nityananda Prabhu was empowered by Sri Chaitanya to preach the Sankirtan movement in Bengal, Sri Gadadhar Das was one of Lord Nityananda's chief assistants. He preached the Sankirtan movement by requesting everyone to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. This simple preaching method of Sri Gadadhar Das can be followed by anyone and everyone in any position of society. One must simply be a sincere, serious servant of Nityananda Prabhu and preach this cult door to door. That was Lord Chaitanya ordered Nityananda to go out, and then he would go door to door and preach, tell everybody to chant Krishna's name, glorify Krishna, and hear about Krishna. So him, and of course it started with him and Haridas Thakur. And some people were receptive, just like here, and some people aren't receptive. When you knock on the door, they do book distribution. Some people just, okay, I won't have time. Some people, in this case, in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam, some of them, the envious, they thought, they're just looking to see what we have in our house. Maybe they'll come later and steal things. So they have all these different types of mentality. Even 500 years ago, you had a range of mentalities that you had to deal with. Materially diseased, as we understand it to be. These material diseased. So, when Srila Gadadhar Das Prabhu was preaching the cult of Hari Kirtan, there was a magistrate who was very much against this Sankirtan movement. Following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Gadadhar Das one night went to the house of the Qazi and requested him to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The Qazi is like a sheriff, he's like a security, he works for the king. So the Qazi replied, all right, I shall chant the Hare Krishna tomorrow. On hearing this, Srila Gadadhar Prabhu began to dance, and he said, why tomorrow? You have already chanted the Hare Krishna mantra, so simply continue. So, Prabhupada often, just if somebody says Hare Krishna, even if it was unfavorable, when he was in Australia, there was an event, and news reporters are typically, also often, they would come and they'd interview, and then when they go write the article, oftentimes it'd be what their mentality often came out in the article. And sometimes it wouldn't be favorable. Oftentimes. And there was one time in Australia this happened, and then Prabhupada, when he got the article, the magazine or whatever, and he said, well, just count how many times he said Hare Krishna in that article, and there was quite often the person, and then Prabhupada said, that's Krishna consciousness, that's an impact. Krishna's name is pure, non-different than him. So, in the Gaura Ganesh Dipika, it said, Srila Gadadhar Das is considered to be a united form of Chandrakanti, who is the effulgence of Srimati Radharani, and Purnandana, who is the foremost of Lord Balaram's very dear girlfriends. Thus, Srila Gadadhar Das Prabhu was one of the associates of Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu. Once while Sri Gadadhar Das Prabhu was returning to Bengal from Jagannath Puri with Nityananda Prabhu, he forgot himself and began talking very loudly as if he were a girl of Rajabhumi selling yogurt. And Srila Nityananda Prabhu noted this. Another time, while absorbed in ecstasy of the gopis, he carried a jug filled with Ganges water on his head as if he were selling milk. When Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the house of Raghava Pandit while going to Vrindavan, Gadadhar Das went to see him. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so glad that he put his foot on his head. When Gadadhar Das Prabhu was present in India, Dada, he established his Bala Gopal Murti for worship there. Sri Madhava Ghosh performed a drama known as Dhanakanda for the help of Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Gadadhar Das. This is explained in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Anchalila 5, text 318 to 394. It's pretty long. The tomb of Gadadhar Pandit, which is in the village of India Dada, was under the control of some Yoga Vaishnavas and later under the direction of Siddhi Bhagavan Das Babaji of Kalna. By his order, Sri Madhusudana Mulak, one of the members of the aristocratic Mulak family of the Narakalandanga in Calcutta, established a Pativati monastery there in the Bengali year 1256 and the Christian year of 1849. He also arranged for the worship of a deity named Sri Radhika. His son, Balachandra Mulak, established Gauranatai deities there in the Bengali year 1312, Christian year 1905. Thus, on the throne of the temple are both Gaur Nityananda deities and Radha Krishna deities. Below the throne is a tablet with an inscription written in Sanskrit. In that temple there are also a small deity of Lord Shiva and Gopeshwara. This is all described on a stone by the side of the entrance of the door. So in our calendar, Gadadhar Pandit comes, we also, his appearance day is also recognized in our Vaishnava calendar. Okay, text 54. Shivananda saying the 24th branch of the tree was an extremely confidential servant of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Everyone who went to Jagannath Puri to visit Lord Chaitanya took shelter and guidance of Shivananda saying. We read, about the ecstasies of Lord Chaitanya in the Chaitanya Bhagavat and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but all these associates also experience these elevated, as we just read about Gadadhar Pandit. They were all, when the kirtans, they were all extremely drowned in an ocean of ecstasies and would roll on the ground and experience all these ecstasies that described in the advanced stages of Krishna consciousness. When these symptoms first appear, the Acharyas say that first they should be repressed. Occasionally you might have a symptom. As you progress in Krishna consciousness, they come. But initially they should be repressed. You shouldn't make a show of these external things. There's going to be a point when suppression is not going to work on a honest practitioner. We even have stories in the Chaitanya Bhagavat where we talked about Haridas Thakur recently, how he'd sit in a cave and he would chant. So one day after this he left and he went to a village and he was chanting, and there was a little program going on where it had this story was told by the king of snakes, whoever that person is. And so he was telling the story about Kalia, and he was a snake charmer. So he had the snake and he was working it, but he was telling the story from the 10th canto. So when Haridas Thakur heard this story, he started going into ecstasy, and he started rolling on the ground. But this individual recognized this. Everybody knew Haridas Thakur was a pure devotee. But there was this other Brahmin. He was a little envious. Oh, look at all the attention Haridas Thakur is getting. So he started, I'm going to roll on the ground and pretend, like I'm feeling ecstasy, But this snake charmer took a stick and beat him, If he's in ecstasy, he's not going to notice it. But immediately he got up and started running away. He was exposed. So there is this cheating. So these things aren't done for profit, adoration, and distinction. These are uncontrollable expressions of people, these devotees' bhava. Okay, text 55. Every year he took a party of devotees from Bengal to Jagannath Puri to visit Lord Chaitanya. He maintained the entire party as they journeyed on the road. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu bestows his causeless mercy upon his devotees in three features: his own direct appearance, saksat; his prowess within someone, he empowers avesh; and his manifestation, avibhava. Purport. The saksat feature of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is his personal presence. Avesha refers to invested power, like that invested in Nakula Brahmachari. Arivava is a manifestation of the Lord that appears even though he is personally not present. For example, Sri Sachimata offered food at home to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although he was far away in Jagannath Puri. And when she opened her eyes after offering the food, she saw that it had actually been eaten by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Similarly, when Srivas Thakur performed Sankirtan, everyone felt the presence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, even in his absence. This is another example of Aribhava. So when Lord Chaitanya was in Jagannath Puri, the devotees that were in Mayapur performing these Sankirtan movements, Lord Chaitanya was there with them when they, and especially with those like here it talks about Srivas felt his presence. It's 57. The appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in every devotee's presence is called saksat. His appearance in Nakula Brahmachari is a symptom of special prowess, is an example of avesh. The former Prajuma Brahmachari was given the name Nrsimhananda Brahmachari by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In his body, there were symptoms of Aribhava. Such appearances are uncommon, but Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu displayed many such pastimes through his different features. Purport. In the Gora, Ganadesh Deepaka, this is a book that
it tells who all these individuals are in Krishna Leela. There's a book. Actually, I got the book. I'm like, small book, and and this one has Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentaries, like we're reading Prabhupada's commentaries about these individuals, and he has commentaries. So they have it in the back of the appendix here, and they tell you which verse you go to, but it has all the, like, first off, you list all the Krishna Leela, and then it says who they are in Gaur Leela. And then they list them all in Gaur Leela and who they are in Krishna Leela, these prominent devotees. There are also sadhakas mixed in here. They're not all Nityasiddhas. We eventually get an opportunity. We make advancement. We're going to go to these, Krishna Leela, that place where Krishna's pastimes are going on. So these Nityasiddhas is required. These are, Rasikananda devotees that carry us those last little bit of our Krishna consciousness and help us all over the threshold. So the book they keep referring to, that's what I wanted to. It is said that Nakula Brahmachari displayed the prowess and Prajuma Brahmachari the experience of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are many hundreds and thousands of devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Among them, there are no special symptoms. But when a devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu functions with specific prowess, he displays a feature called Avesh. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally spread the Sankirtan movement, and he advised all the inhabitants of Bharatvarsh to take up his cult and preach it all over the world. This visible bodily symptoms of the devotees who follow such instructions are called avesha. Srila Shivananda Sain observed such avesha symptoms as Nakula Brahmachari, who displayed symptoms exactly like those of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The Chaitanya Charitamrita states that in the age of Kali, the only spiritual function is to broadcast the holy name of the Lord. But this function can be performed only by one who is actually empowered by Lord Krishna. The process by which a devotee is empowered is called avesh, or sometimes it is called sakyavesh. Juma Brahmachari was formerly a resident of a village known as Priyaganja in Kala. There was a description of him in the Anchalila of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, 2nd chapter, and in the Anchakanda of the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, chapters 3 and 9. 60. Srila Shivananda Sain experienced the three features of Sakta Avesh, Aribhava, and Aribhava. Later I shall vividly describe the transcendental blissful subject. Purport. Srila Shivananda Sain has been described by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj as follows. Shivananda Sain was a resident of Kumarhat, which is also known as Halishhara, and was a great devotee of the Lord. About 1.5 miles from Kumarhat is another village known as Kanchadapada, in which there is a Gora Gopa deities installed by Shivananda Sain, who also established a temple in Krishnanara, Krishna Roy, that is still existing. Shivananda Sain was the father of Paramananda Sain, who is also known as Puri Das or Kavi Kanapur. Paramananda Sain wrote in Gora Ganadesh Dipika that two of the gopis of Vrindavan, whose former names were Vira and Duti, combined to become his father. Srila Shivananda Sain guided all the devotees of Lord Chaitanya who went to Bengal to Jagannath Puri, and he personally bore all the expenses for their journey. This is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya-lila, chapter 16, verses 19 through 27. Srila Shivananda Sain had 3 sons named Chaitanya Das, Ram Das, and Paramananda. As mentioned above, this last son later became Kavi Kanapur and wrote Gora Ganadesh Dipika. His spiritual master was Srinath Pandit, who was Shivananda Sain's priest. Due to Vasudev Dutt lavish spending, Shivananda Sain was engaged to supervise his expenditures. This Kavi Kanapur wrote many books. There's many books that he has. I think there's one about Krishna's pastimes. What's the name of that? Yeah, you did an audio book on that, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, Shivananda Sain actually experienced Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's features of Sakta Avesha and Ari Bhava. He once took along a dog while on his way to Jagannath Puri, and it is described in the Anchalita first chapter that this dog later attained the salvation by his association. When Srila Raghunath Das, who later became Raghunath Das Goswami, fled his parental home to join Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his father wrote a letter to Shivananda Sain to get information about him. Shivananda Sain supplied him the details for which he asked, and later Raghunath Das Goswami's father sent some servants and money to Shivananda Sain to take care of Raghunath Das Goswami. Once Shivananda Sain invited Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to his home and fed him so sumptuously that the Lord felt indigestion and was somewhat sick. This became known to Shivananda Sain's eldest son, Chaitanya Das, who gave the Lord the kinds of food that would help his digestion. And thus Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very pleased. This is described in the Anchalila 10th chapter, verse 142 through 151. So this is like, we're also getting a preview. All these stories we'll read in this Chaitanya Bhagavat. Well, once while going to Jagannath Puri, all the devotees had to stay underneath the tree without the shelter of a house or even a shed. Nityananda Prabhu became very angry, as if he were greatly disturbed by hunger. And thus he cursed Shivananda's sons to die. Shivananda's wife was very much aggrieved with this, and she began to cry. She very seriously thought that since her sons had been cursed by Nityananda, certainly they would die. When Shivananda later returned and saw his wife crying, he said, "Why are you crying? Let us all die if Nityananda Prabhu desires." When Shivananda Sain returned and Nityananda Prabhu saw him, the Lord kicked him severely, complaining that he was hungry, and asked why he had not arranged for his food. Such is the behavior of the Lord with his devotees. Srila Nityananda Prabhu behaved like an ordinary hungry man, as if completely dependent on the arrangements of Shivananda Sain. It's like Krishna Priya told me, I got to feed my deities. You got to feed them every day something. If you don't feed them, then Nityananda is going to kick you. He gets hungry. They get hungry. The Lord gets hungry. You got to reciprocate. It's part of our bhakti. So I just like it. I see that as like Krishna saying, Krishna talking to me. I'm hungry, even though it's coming through the mouth like Krishna Priya. I see it's Krishna's communicating. He communicates to the Vedas, all the devotees. He also communicates with within. I had my deities probably 1980. They were given to me 81 when I was in New Vrindavan. Of course, wasn't looking for deities. Somebody would say, "You want these?" And maybe in my ignorance, I said, "Okay, I'll take them." And so then I had no understanding how to take care of deities, but over a period of time, you just learn the process. Of course, you go to Vrindavan, you buy things and clothes, and devotees make clothes, and so things develop. Especially for me, because I'm a slow learner. But you offer different things, and I would offer a flower all the time. And then at one point, I realized, well, maybe I should put the flower on like a plate, and not so this way it develops. So I bought, looking for a plate. I couldn't find a little plate, but I found like a little tiny bowl, like yellow, and had like flowers all around it. So this is cute. Let me do that. It's real small. And then I was reading. And then I was reading, it said, well, when you offer a flower, it should be in a bowl of water when you offer a flower to deities. And I've never heard this anywhere. I don't think anybody does that anywhere. So it says you should. So I think Krishna's telling me, okay, I got a little bowl, put a little water in it when you put the flower in it. I used to offer it without water, but now I put water in it because that's all personal things. That's not a thing that, okay, the standards should change. These are ways that Krishna communicates with everybody. And we have to be open to Krishna's communicating to us. It's a matter. It comes with Krishna consciousness, and everything about Krishna consciousness is personal, because we're all unique devotees in our practice. There are a lot of things that we have in common, But there's a lot of things that are very individual, and everybody reads different books at different times and gets different information at different times from different people. Prabhupada was also unique with different people at different times. That's why the letters sometimes were considered, these are personal items and not really should be published like all the other books. I think initially the archives published the letters. And then I think the GB said, no, they shouldn't be published again, even though they're part of the folio. Because sometimes instructions are personal to a person according to time, place, and circumstance. So they're not necessarily on the same level as, like, say, the Srimad Bhagavatam, even though oftentimes they're quoted to some extent. They're different at the same time. Different. So it's very personal. And okay, so let me finish this paragraph right here. Okay, so his nephew, Shivananda Sain, named Shritakanta, left the company to protest Nityananda Prabhu's curse and went directly to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri, where the Lord pacified him. On that occasion, Lord Chaitanya allowed his toe to be sucked by Puri Das, who was then a child. It is the old order of Chaitanya Prabhu that he could immediately compose Sanskrit verses. During the misunderstanding with Shivananda's family, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ordered his personal attendant to Govinda to give him all the remnants of his food. This is described in Achalila chapter 12, verse 53. Shivananda Srikanta, his nephew, when he went to see Lord Chaitanya and he left, he was really upset that Nityananda had kicked his uncle. And he left. They were still on the way to Jagannath Puri, but he got there early. And he was very upset, and he went to Lord Chaitanya and he offered his obeisances first. But then Swarup Damodar started to chastise him because of the way he was dressed. He was wearing an upper garment, which was inappropriate, sewn cloth or something. But then Lord Chaitanya stopped Swarup Damodar and said, all right, it was, and so he pacified him in his condition. He surrendered to the Lord, even though he didn't understand properly. He still got the mercy of the Lord. So, 61, the sons, servants, and family members of Shivananda Sain constitute a sub-branch. They were all sincere servants of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The three sons of Shivananda Sain, named Chaitanya Das, Ram Das, Karnapur, were all heroic devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Purport. Chaitanya Das, the eldest son of Shivananda Sain, wrote a commentary on the Krishna Karnamrita that was later translated by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his paper, Sajjana Toshini. According to expert opinion, Chaitanya Das was the author of the book Chaitanya Charita, also known as Chaitanya Charmrita. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll come back to that. Okay, thank you very much. All glory to Sri Guru and Gauranga.